part of it is attention. It's giving people, the quality of your attention, which is the really listening. Another component that I think is quite helpful is this one of equality. And the idea is everybody being equal as thinkers. So even in a hierarchical situation where some people have greater decision-making power, for example, everybody is capable of thinking for themselves and contributing. So it's that, that respect you accord people. And the way you do this in quite practical ways can be things like building rounds into your meeting, so everybody's invited to speak. If you've got just a free-for-all discussion, then research has shown that, a minority of people will take up most of the airspace, and, the bigger the group, proportionally the smaller number of people who will take up the airspace and things like this. So having some sort of ground rules for meetings so that everybody gets a chance to be heard, really important. So that's another one.
Hi, and welcome to the Sunday Lunch Project Manager podcast for Sunday, 21st January 2024. This is your host, Nigel Creaser, and today we have part one of my interview with FelicityDwyer, the connection crafter. Enjoy. So I have a number of sponsors, affiliate links in the way that it's set up that have kindly allowed me to share their services, really. The first one is Mike Clean, and Mike runs online PM courses, and it is a great resource for getting those fundamentals of project management trained, reasonably priced, and Mike presents it in an accessible and clear manner. You can check out some of his videos on his YouTube channel and kind of give you a view of where they are. But the code for that, if you go to nigelcreaser.com/online PM courses, all one word, lowercase, that'll redirect you to it. There's very different levels that you can buy. You can buy individual courses, you can buy pathways as well, if you like. And I get a kickback off those. Mike kindly shares me that. So if you do jump on and use it, I hope you find it really useful. I think he has money back guarantees and things like that as well. So there's very limited risk on that. So jump on that, and that again, it's nigelcreaser.com/online PM courses, and enjoy. I am delighted today to welcome FelicityDwyer to the show. Felicity helps individuals and teams to connect and communicate so that people feel heard and understood. Her style is warm, engaging, and inclusive. With Felicity as your podcast guest, I'm told, you can expect lively conversation and practical takeaways for your listeners. So this is what I'm being told. So we need to make sure we tick those at the end. She is passionate about lifelong learning and has worked in adult learning and development for over 20 years. As a facilitator, trainer, speaker, and coach, she has helped people to become great communicators, managers, and leaders. She is qualified in numerous development methodologies and works with managers and staff across the public, private and voluntary sectors. And she's got a book, as those watching you can see in the back there, she has a new book out, it's been out a while now, she said, called Crafting Connection. And so we're bound to be talking about that and how we get on with those sort of things. So welcome, Felicity.
Thank you, Nigel, and thank you for inviting me on as your guest. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, and I'll butcher the intro as I always do. So tell us a little bit more about you and your career. Obviously, you've got a long career in helping people, as you say, become great communicators, leaders, managers. How did you get into all this? What sort of...
Well, I've been self-employed for 20 years, but prior to that, I worked in the voluntary sector in an organisation that was involved with strategic skills development. And I could have got that job because I've always been passionate about learning and self-directed learning. So that got me into this organisation. And I think there was a point there. I mean, I was managing small projects at the time, and I was managing communications within a team. And there was a point at which I realised I would like to be out there working directly with people rather than just being a little bit more at the back end, desk based. So that's what sort of led me to make the transition out into the freelance world. And there was a point in this organisation where we had the opportunity to work in learning groups, so peer learning groups. And I just found the process of coming together with people across the organisation, sharing our challenges, exploring, what we wanted to develop ourselves as well as to get better in our roles. I found that process fascinating. And we had a facilitator, an external expert facilitator, and I was watching what she did. And not only did I really benefit from being in the group, but I was looking at her role and thinking, oh, that's something I'd like to do. So it's little sparks like that. I felt I had role models, and she later became a mentor, a colleague. So, I've worked with her on and off for the past 20 years, this individual. But that's what sort of sparked me in thinking, oh, I could go into organisations and bring my skills in and help other people to learn and connect and work together more effectively. So that was a little bit of the spark behind it. And there's plenty more, but that's just one I'm going to share today.
Yeah, it's funny how you can see someone and think, yeah, that's what I want to do. And it can it come from funny angles, can't it? Where you're not expecting it because you won't go into these sort of things, think this is what's going to happen. So tell us about that first time when you started doing that sort of stuff. How did you go about it when you first started working for yourself?
I think when I started working for myself, I mean, firstly, I think it really helped that I was supported by the organisation I had been employed by, because I think that's quite helpful. So they did give me some work when I started out, and I managed to find a couple of other clients quite quickly, because of course you do have to have more than one client when you go self-employed. You can't just work for your employer, because that might not be looked on positively by the tax man. But I think that really helped. And to be honest, it took me a while to build up the facilitation, training and coaching side of my business, because I had been known as somebody who, was more of a manager, but also somebody who was responsible for communications, written communication. So I started out with quite a lot of writing good practice materials and this kind of thing, topics like leadership and I did, what did I do? I have to remember because it's a long time ago. Work experience, setting up a good work experience placement. I did training needs analysis. So I did a whole toolkit on that. So I did quite a lot of writing at first, and then gradually built up the training side. And in my 20 years, I'm not going to give you too much detail, but I have done a few things. I had a coaching practice. I ran an ILM centre for 12 years, just winding that side of the business down. And increasingly, I've done associate work as well, which I quite like, because there's less of having to market yourself and more of actually doing the work that I love to do. So I think if you are setting up as a freelancer, you'll try things. You may need to gradually direct your career in the way you want to go. Something I've learned, and I think it's relevant to anyone, project managers or any other role, is when you're taking on work, thinking about what am I going to learn from this job, and is it going to take me in the direction I want? Because there is a bit of a trap, and I've fallen into this loads of times, because we all need to get paid, of taking on work and getting known for work that I didn't necessarily want to do. So I think that's something I've learned over the years, is to really think a step ahead and think, what am I going to learn from this piece of work, this project, and how will that help me direct my career in the way I want? And for me, self-employment has allowed me to direct my own career. But even if you're employed or you're taking on contracts, project management contracts, always think a step ahead and think a bit strategically where you can, where you've got that luxury, I suppose, of not just having to take something to pay the bills, which sometimes you do realistically.
Yeah, I can see that. It's something that it's funny. I'm trying to recall. I had a conversation sometime the other day about choosing projects, and mindset, if you like, of a project manager, because we're quite often, as PMs, we're employees, quite a lot of different roles, but you're employees within an organisation, and those, but you're, even as an employee, you're kind of a freelancer within the organisation in some ways, aren't you, quite often? Because it's not like you've got that chain. You're going to be going around lots of different things, and you're going to get known for something. And like my career in the IT, a couple of times you get, I'll move into an area, and then if you spend 6 months there, you become known as the person who does telephony or the person who does infrastructure. And sometimes your ability to break out of that is quite hard. And I suppose the difference with freelance kind of work, and I know that my brother's a Harley Davidson mechanic, independent, works for himself, but he's a motorcycle mechanic. So people come to him with other things, and the other things quite often can be a pain in the backside because they're not, that you know what I mean, they're not part of his niche. And he hasn't got, he has the capability, the knowledge and things like that. It's just not giving him the same joy that you'd get from the things that he wants to do. And I think that's the same with us as project managers. It's where you do have that choice. Don't just take the next project, because sometimes you sit there thinking, if it's gone quiet, and you roll on to the next. Quite often you're rolling onto the next project while you're rolling off the last project that's just finishing, and you haven't even had time to breathe, think about what you learned, think about whether it is value, catch up on the skills side of it that you haven't done because you've been full on delivering. And I hear this conversation with a lot of PMs that I've worked with and have worked for me. And it is hard to turn around and go, actually, I don't want that, because there's a risk associated with, I don't want that. If you're freelancing, it's money. I know you can't get it out of the crude, it's money. Or it might be a customer that you want to work with, but it's not the thing you want to work with them for them with. And I can see how that can be difficult to make those decisions. But I think it makes you think about that from a leadership point of view anyway, and from a manager point of view, look, a whole career, whether it is easy just to go and do the work rather than do work that gives you, and that learning is a massive thing. Some of the projects I've learned lots on, I haven't realised I was going to learn on, and during the time I didn't realise I was learning, and really didn't want to be in those projects. But that's sometimes where you get that, you hone your skills in those difficult roles. I suppose with seeing people where you're coaching in their leadership skills, coaching in those management skills, what sort of thing, and maybe if it's projects, as you know, it's project managers is my audience there, but maybe from project managers, what do you see things that come up commonly where you think, yeah, it's this again, it's this again, it's this again, and not in a negative way, it's just that it's that common, there's going to be common themes. What sort of things do you see?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few different ones clearly, and it depends on the levels you're working with. I tend to work with either first line managers, so people who are directly leading a team, and that might be a team for a small project. It might be a different kind of team, and also people who are more at the middle management level and have now got the point where they are having to often be that person who's managing up, but is also having to communicate down to their team. So they're starting to get a slightly more strategic role. They're starting to get more of a leadership role, but they're still not at that senior decision making role. So again, on the sort of small group courses and things we get people who are directly managing projects, and we get people who are in other management roles. Yeah. So, you know, my expertise is with working with managers rather than specifically project managers, but we do get project managers on our courses. And of course, with project management, I think some of the things that are working with potentially multidisciplinary teams and people under pressure to deliver, because there's often the deadlines. Often projects involve change. So, you know, you've got the challenge of the different ways that people engage with change. The other thing I see a lot with the newer managers is that's stepping up, having the confidence and assertiveness to move from somebody who's doing the doing to somebody who is getting something done through other people. And that can involve, a shift of mindset, different ways of communicating, the inner development that happens when you're a leader, and you need to let go of some things, and you need to develop, particularly around the communication skills, which is the area I work, that interpersonal communication, to work perhaps in a different way with people. So that's probably quite a lot that I've said. So I'll but lots. Those are some of the things that I've come across in my career.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's especially when you're talking about the stepping up from a contributor to a manager role. Yeah. And I know I've got some. In fact, I was at our Christmas party last night. I was chatting to one of our sort of junior project managers, and just thinking about from their perspective, they're stepping into a role. And there's a perception of age as well that you get in organisations where someone has come in, they're moving through those, they're doing some of the smaller projects and delivering some stuff there, and they're doing really good work. And I suppose, whereas what would you see as the one? Obviously, the delegation's probably the skill that a lot of them need to learn, but other than, and I think that one kind of steps out as being in quotes obvious, but people don't realise it's obvious and how to delegate, and there's tools to do, but realise that, you can't do it all. But what other things do you see with those more first-time managers? And I'm sure I know there's, because one of them was telling me that they would listen to the podcast. So I know there's people who are in that role where they've just started in last 6-12 months as a project manager, as a manager. Let's forget project manager, as a manager of people. What couple of things do you focus on first in helping those people?
Well, a model that I find is helpful to people stepping into this management role is John Adair's 3 circles model. Right. The task, the team, and the individual. And that's because people are often, come from being focused on the task. And clearly that's still important. I mean, leadership 101 is, communicating the purpose of the team and making sure people know the objectives of what they're going for. But also you've got these other 2 areas. You've got working with the individuals, and for a new manager, that may be working with people who have been your peers. It may be working with people if you're managing a project from different disciplines. It may be communicating with stakeholders. So, that's the wider area of individuals, but certainly you're working with the individuals within your team. So you need to be having conversations with them. You need to be finding out what motivates them. You need to be becoming aware of their skills and also what they're interested in. We talked earlier about, taking on jobs that will develop the skills you want. So, it's being an awareness of where your team members want to go in the long term can help you with the motivation side. And also you need to be aware of the team dynamics and potentially, some of the things that can get in the way of that are people being a little nervous of conflict. But actually, if you notice there's something within the team that is getting in the way of performance, and it's actually due to some sort of conflict between people, there may be something that you need to do, whether it's a mediation role in, perhaps a small mediation role, or whether it's something with the way you structure your team meetings, very practical things that you might want to do to help people work together as a team. And I think those 3 circles just gives you a very simple but powerful map of areas you need to focus. And I think there's a couple of things managers can do. Firstly, think, where am I most comfortable? So am I most comfortable thinking about tasks and objective and milestones and so forth? Or am I most comfortable having those coaching conversations with individuals? Or am I really comfortable, facilitating a team meeting, supporting that side of it? So people will have their own natural areas where they're comfortable and they feel they're skilled. So that's a start. And it's it's partly looking at you, where do I need to develop my skills? And it's also looking at the team and thinking, okay, where is there anything out of balance in those 3? And if so, is that where I need to focus my energies at the moment? So it's a simple model, but I think it's deceptively simple because it can
Well, the
give you a bit of a framework.
simpler the model, the better is my mind.
Yeah.
I think I've banged on about the disc model on this show multiple times, and there's a few different versions of it in many with different words on it and different colours and different things. But I like that because it's easy for my brain. I've got to ask 2 questions, and then I can kind of get a feeling of something, and it's that modifying yourself, and it's that self-awareness, isn't it? It's planning that, and that what you've just said there, that preference of where you like to be in those different roles will be quite interesting, because if you are that task person, you just want to get it done, I'm guessing you get dragged down into doing the stuff for people rather than helping them get it done. And then that's where you as a manager, you'll end up, why am I not doing that leadership role, doing lots of doing alongside the team, and ending up just overloaded because you're not doing the things you need to do as a manager in your day. You know what I mean? You can't do it in your day because you're doing it as well. So I can see that myself. I've done it myself. I found myself, and I do find myself dropping down into things that I really should be turning around and saying, can that person do it? And I have to make myself think about it, because I was in a conversation like this week, actually. I think, oh, well, I'm doing that anyway. And they're saying, we shouldn't be doing that. This person's there to do that for you. Yeah, but I can get it done quicker. Give it that. But yeah, and we all, I assume that everyone at all levels in an organisation, and you'll probably tell me this, but you've dealt with people, have that problem where even it doesn't matter how senior you are, there are certain things that you just let yourself get dragged down into because that's your natural tendency. Is that something you see, do you think?
Absolutely. And I think there's a couple of things that can help. I mean, firstly, it is just reminding yourself, what is my role as a manager, which is to get things done through other people. And it doesn't mean you won't be doing things yourself, but it's just taking a step back. And I think this can be particularly prevalent when you've been promoted, because you know your role really well, and therefore it's tempting to do it. The other thing which sort of picks up on that, I could do it more quickly myself, which is really common, particularly when we're talking about delegation.
There's me with spreadsheets days.
A role of the manager is to develop people. So again, is my job to get this done as quickly as possible. And in an emergency, or if you're really up against the deadline, it may be fair enough. But it's always worth challenging yourself and saying, actually, or is my job is to equip my team so that more people are able to do this if I fell under the proverbial bus. And, if you think about team resilience and creating a team that is not reliant on one person, then the more you can do to develop people, the more you're going to get better performance as a team in the longer run. And also you're building up capacity in the team if, something happens unexpected. So I think it's really reminding yourself your role as the manager is not to do everything. You are not serving your team, and you're not serving, the project outcomes, the stakeholders, if that's always your default. So once you recognise it in yourself, it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to take a step back and remind myself. But when you're under pressure, it's a very human thing. So it's not about beating yourself up. It's just recognising, okay, this is a pattern. I need to step back and think, okay, how can I develop somebody so they can do it? And is that the best use of my time at the moment? It might take longer, but is it actually in the long term the best use of my time?
Yeah, I get that. It's that thing where you're sitting there sometimes as well. It's about protecting the team, because I find myself doing that. Is that there'll be something where we need something done, need something quickly. I know they're busy. I know they've got loads of stuff on. I know that's going to cause it. So I'll kind of go, well, I'll just do it. And I never think of that comment that you just made there. And I've always thought about the fact that delegation is about coaching, about teaching people to do it.
Yes.
But sometimes we'll do it is in a caring manner to protect people. And then if we step back and look at it, actually, well, we're not helping them develop. So therefore we're not doing the caring thing. It seems like the caring thing for your team, whereas actually the real caring thing would be let them stretch, let them push, work with them, say, look, I need you to do this. Can you get this done? I'm busy. Okay, let's work out what you can reshuffle, what you can, and teach them how to do prioritization a bit better, so that then that gives them two sets of skills there, the thing you're getting them to do and a way of fitting stuff in and deciding, or just coming to me and going, well, I don't have time to do it. Which one of I've got these things to do. I think that one's the more important one that you've just given me. Are these two? Shall I drop that one? And go, and you as a manager would be able to say, well, yeah, drop that one. Anyone says anything, talk to me. Tell them, talk to me. I've told you, yes, it's more priority. But having those conversations, because it's hard to have those conversations, because as an individual, you're thinking, I need to get all this done. Oh, they've given me something else to do. I've got to get all that done. Whereas sometimes you just got to push back and go, or you can either push back or you just sit there yourself and go, well, I'll take the noise for that. I'll take the noise for not doing that. I won't blame, just say, well, no, I didn't do it. I had other priorities. I had to do it. You don't necessarily turn around and say, the boss gave me something extra to do, so I dropped that. It's just, that's the priority I made. That you can make that priority call, and you just take the flak for it. And if someone wants to escalate it, and you kind of talk to your manager and go, well, I made a decision that I needed to do that. I decided not to do that. And then if they say, well, you should have spoke to me first. Okay, fine. But I chose not to. We were kind of grown-ups, aren't we? And sometimes we don't take that. We don't feel we can make that grown-up decision, if you like. And I don't want to belittle that and suggest anything where people are being childish. It's just a case of we feel that we have those constraints of we must, whereas actually we can choose and accept consequences.
Yeah, and I think listening to you, I think there's a couple of important points. I think one thing when we do, exercises around, what makes a great manager, and coming up, a word that often comes up is approachable. So that idea of, you're not potentially overloading people, you're giving people, but if people know that it's safe to come to you and say, look, I'm just overwhelmed, I can't do everything, is it okay to drop this or ask for a bit of support? And I'm going to come back to coaching in a minute because I think it's really important. So I think it's partly making sure it's okay for people to come to us. The other thing,
how do you know if you're approachable?
Well, it's a really good question. I think it's really important. One of the things I think is really important is to create some psychological safety within a team. And that means a few things. I think it means partly not passing blame down, not having a blame culture, but having a series where if something goes wrong, it's okay. So let's look at what happened, what's some of the root causes of that, how might we avoid that in future, what's some of the things we can do differently. So it's very much, it's avoiding that kind of why did you do that attitude. I think that that question why can be a bit loaded. I would say with why it's great to apply to a process, why didn't this process work, but for an individual it can be a bit confrontational. So it's okay, let's talk through what happened. Okay, what was the thinking behind that? So have those kind of open conversations. So not passing blame down. Really trying not to be judgmental. I mean, one of the things I talk about in my book is the real importance of listening with an open mind, with what I call gentle curiosity. So it's not a nosiness so much as just, I'm genuinely interested in what you think and how you feel about this. So not jumping to conclusions either, not making too many assumptions, but just bringing that, okay, I really genuinely want to understand what happened if something's gone wrong. So that attitude rather than an attitude of blame, trying to blame people if things go wrong. And you touched on that as well. It's not helpful. It's about, okay, what can we learn from this? How can we, prevent this happening again? And the other thing I think is really important is the sort of coaching element. And at its simplest, it's asking a question rather than giving information. And a book I recommend on this, you may well have come across it, is The Coaching Habit by Michael Bungay-Stenier. And the subtitle is Say Less, Ask More, and Change the Way You Lead Forever. And his sort of attitude is, as busy managers, you may not have time for long coaching conversations.
Yeah.
But if somebody comes to you and asks you something and you think that they may have the answer themselves, clearly, if it's just a piece of factual information, they need you to give it to them. But if they come to you with a question, you might start with, something like, okay, well, I've got some ideas, but beforehand, what ideas have you have? How might you tackle this if I weren't around? So it's just encouraging people to think something through for themselves, because, of course, as soon as you have to start thinking and articulating what you would do, often and if you don't, then, and you need to come in with some information, then you're actually coming in giving people something they don't know rather than telling them what they do know. So just those simple asking an open question rather than immediately jumping in and trying to be too helpful or too much telling.
It's hard, isn't it? Because I know I've got people
who habit.
Yeah, and you want to fix stuff in my brain, and I do it with it's my default response with a lot of things in work, in family, and friends, sort of things. You want to fix the problem for someone, and if you've got an idea of how you can fix it, but it can come across preachy and lectury, and you're the big I am, know how to fix everything. And I hear myself sometimes, and I think I've got to stop myself, because I'm giving too much to someone who knows it already, like you say, and that kind of, well, when they're stuck, and they really say they're stuck, you can give suggestions, or ask questions that will drive them down that route. But it's quite, as you say, you've got to think really carefully about your responses, really carefully about, like you say, what they're saying, in order to make those responses right. And quite often we've got half an hour to talk about something. Oh, that bit of coaching is not going to be done because we talk about something else that's delivery or something like that comes into it. And it gets muddy, doesn't it? And we've got a plan to do it, and we've got to invest the time in that coaching preparation, that coaching listening. It's something I know that I can improve on. It's one of the areas that I think is one of my next areas of focus, I think.
Yeah, and I was thinking that people who become project managers are tend to be problem solvers, like problem solving, good at problem solving, and that's part of the skill set. But the skill set of listening, of actually being really open to different perspectives, and this being able to listen without necessarily needing to agree, but to listen and set your assumptions aside, particularly if you're talking to stakeholders as well as people in the team. It's open, the open questions, the reflecting back what you're hearing so people can know they've been heard. So something like, okay, may I just check I've understood? And then just summarising what you've heard or reflecting back a few keywords, because that helps people feel understood. And I always love Stephen Covey's quote, seek first to understand, then be understood. It's listen first, understand, and then, you can put a different perspective. But if you've understood where someone's coming from, your response is going to be better for lots of reasons. And partly because you might be thinking differently, having heard what they said, it might shift your thinking. Also, it can help you in the way you communicate. You talked about DISC, which I also love as a simple model. So if you get a sense that somebody's got quite a direct style, for example, it's a bit of a clue to you that they don't want to hear you do a lot of thinking aloud. If you can just communicate in a really clear, concise way, that's more likely to get you heard. So it can also give you a sense of how do people communicate, and what clues does that give me about how I might communicate better with them. And I know, I have more of an influence, sort of steady style. I'm on that people side, and somebody very close to me is very much has a direct style. And so I've learned that it's not helpful for me to go in and sort of talk aloud to this individual, because he will look at me and say, okay, just tell me what you want. So I've kind of learned a little bit that I need to do that thinking first. But then if I go in and just say clearly what I want, most of the time I will get it. Yeah. So, I think that the DISC model, I talk about it in my book, the fairly generic model, and I know there's lots of different diagnostics arising from it, but just the basic model just provides a map, doesn't it, for recognising where your style might not be working with others, and therefore how you might make some simple adjustments so that you're understood. And that's more likely to happen if you've started with genuinely being interested in the other person, whether
Yeah.
that's your team member or any other stakeholder.
It is that it's something you can use across any interaction that you've got, isn't it? And the first time I ever heard of it was in a family environment, and it was a father and daughter one, the example that Dr. Robert Ron was talking about, and I found it quite. At the time, I really thought it was amazing, and then years later, I've got back into that and realised and started using it a bit more and thinking about it, and I've said it on here before, and I've said it to other people about why I think it works and those kind of models. Simplicity is fundamentally, it helps you realise why you think that person's a dickhead and why they think you're a dickhead. And that's it. It's and once you realise why someone would think you're like that, you can adapt to work along with them. And when they're being the way they are, you can sit there and go, oh, it's not me that they're having a go at. It's just or it's not me that they're behaving in a certain way to me. It's just the way they are. It's like the whole someone cutting you up in traffic. They don't even know you. They don't consider you. They are just, all they're considering is they're rushing to get somewhere. They're not bothered about whether they cut you up, because you're not even we all think everything's around us, don't we? And actually, they're not even considering you as an individual or your vehicle. It's just, there's the gap that I'm going for. And it's, when you do that, and it's hard to do, especially in conversations when you've got email or IM and stuff like that, where where you infer meaning, and that meaning comes back on you, where you're going, well, they're thinking this, and then you have someone else read that same email with different emphasis, and you go, oh yeah, maybe that's what they meant, and you don't know, you don't know what it is, and that accept it as it is, and then ask another question, like you were saying there. On email probably isn't a great place, but picking up the phone and have the conversation and going, not sure what you mean. Can you just explain a little bit? Can you explain and try to understand what they mean in that message? Allows you to do exactly what you've said there, doesn't it? It allows you to get behind that, understand what their drivers are, and understand what your reaction needs to be. Whereas sometimes what we'll do is just have a flame war on email. Twitter is the place where you can watch it on a day-to-day basis. And LinkedIn, actually, I find sometimes there are a few cases where I quite sit there on the sidelines watching a few conversations on there. But it's that inherent assumptions and not seeking to understand someone else's point of view and assuming and inferring meaning in their words. It's hard. It's a hard lesson to learn, though, I think. Another great sponsor of the show comes in the form of Air Manual. Air Manual is it's a tool for documenting process, which and best practices. It's a company formed by one of my interviewees, Alexis Kingsbury. Essentially, and I kind of summarised why my view of where we see documentation and my experience has been, people will document something, a process, they'll put it in a Visio diagram that gets loaded onto a SharePoint site or something similar, and then a bunch of that. So then once that diagram's been shared with senior management, they're happy they have a process in the business. But then the detailed procedures underneath it might be in Word documents, in just poorly kept and not linked easily and not updated. And what Air Manual does, it allows you to put in it's a tool for doing this kind of thing. You whack it in, the service in there, get in there, put in your process, your flow, and you build it down to as low a level of detail, even to the point of checklists where people can check off they've done it. So it creates that guided checklists, easy to create, easy to maintain, and all in one place. And no one's kind of rooting around to find the SharePoint, and then when you change to new SharePoint services and all that stuff, it's all there. So if you pop along to nigelpriester.com/airmanual, there's a bit more detail there and a link there to click on to go and get. I think they offer a trial and things like that. So it's something that I think can easily reduce the amount of errors, rework, etc. within our organisations. So take a look. Hope you enjoyed that. But you're thinking, I wonder what the next bit's going to be. Yeah, it's frustrating, isn't it? You heard at the beginning of the show where I said there's a way around that. So if you're really itching and you want to hear the next bit of this show, jump down to Patreon, have a look, find the one that's got a little lock on it, click on it, and you'll be able to get the second half along with the first half all together. And you won't get this annoying bit or the annoying bit at the beginning that I just done as well. So, yeah, give it a go. It's only a price of a coffee. Cheers. So this is my final wrap up. Every week you're going to hear this. You're going to get bored of it, but you can always click next podcast if so. If you have enjoyed it, if you listen to this podcast to the end of this show and you think that was great, I'd love to be able to help Nigel out. There are loads of ways you can do it. The first and obvious way is to share the podcast, send it out to people. If you know colleagues and friends who'd benefit from it, you think they'd enjoy it, just send them the link. Grab one of the links or send them to www.nigelcreaser.com/podcasts. That's www.nigelcreaser.com/podcasts, and that will push them over to a Linktree link, and it's got all of the different ways they can consume the podcast. If you are feeling generous and have a big bag of cash, you could grab a copy of one of my books. Obviously, they're available in all the usual places, and print and digital. Again, jump on the website www.nigelcreaser.com/shop, and that will give you a list of all the different ways that you can contribute and grab copies of the book. Also got links to all my guests' books on there as well, where I get a little bit of a kickback from them. If you are of a sporting mind, I have a number through doing some of my judo and running antics. I've managed to secure a few affiliate links and affiliates there as well. So in there, somewhere in the sponsors page, there's links to those as well. So clicking onto those and grabbing if you're looking to get super fit, then that would be fabulous as well. And I get a little kickback from those. I have a Patreon account. It's patreon.com/sundaylunchpm. So again, you can ping something in there, buy me a coffee or whatever. And finally, obviously the most important is coming back, listen again, because the more of you that come back, the more visibility I get, because there's more times that it's downloaded and all the SEO works and things like that. So yeah, that's it. So if you can help me out, I would be much appreciated. If you can't, don't worry about it. Thank you very much. Cheers now. Bye. My latest, the latest affiliate that I've got on the show now is Riverside. I use Riverside to do my interviews, Riverside FM. It kind of offers you a whole, if you like, micro studio management producer tooling and goes beyond that. Has a really good free layer. And I've been using it for a while now. I find it really good. When I've had issues, even though I'm not on one of the higher paid levels, the support has been quick, responsive and of high quality, and people keen to help me. The organisation seems really good. The product seems really intuitive. And quality is really good as well. And it's a clever way of doing it is when you're recording through your browsers, so you've not got loads of desktop resources being used compared to some other products that I've used. And what they also do is they stream a lower quality version of it up onto as you're doing the interview, so you're not burning bandwidth while you're doing the interview and potentially impacting on the quality of the conversation. And then at the end, it uploads it, the higher quality from your browser. It's just a really good way of doing it. So if you are thinking of doing a podcast and know someone who's doing a podcast, I would recommend using this tool. I found it really good. Best of the tools that I've tried using to date. And you can get that at nigelcreaser.com/riverside, and that will redirect you to my kickback page on their site, and there I will get a little kickback from them. So take a look. Thanks. Well, it's goodbye from me, Nigel Creaser, and it's goodbye from him, the Sunday Lunch PM. Goodbye.